Morning arrived quietly, as if nothing had happened. The sunlight seeped through the curtains, soft and indifferent, highlighting the normalcy I no longer felt. The house smelled like yesterday's tea and the faint scent of his presence, lingering like a ghost. I moved through the rooms mechanically, making breakfast, tidying up, pretending the world was unchanged. But I knew it wasn't. Each sound, the clatter of a spoon, the hum of the refrigerator, the distant birds outside, reminded me that I had crossed a line. Guilt settled over me like a heavy blanket. I replayed last night repeatedly in my mind, the way he looked at me, the brush of his hand, the closeness we had shared. Every detail both thrilled and haunted me. When my partner appeared, bright-eyed and unaware, I felt a sharp pang of shame. Their smile, their routine chatter, everything felt alien now. I wanted to reach out, to bridge the gap, but the distance between my actions and their knowledge felt insurmountable. How could I return to normalcy after having touched something forbidden, if only emotionally, if only for a moment? I spent the day caught between two realities. The first was the life I had promised to my partner, the life of loyalty, comfort, and predictable routines. The second was the memory of him, the boy who had entered my house and awakened something dormant, something raw. That memory lingered in the corners of my mind, unexpected and unrelenting, refusing to be ignored. I considered telling my partner. The thought made my chest tighten. Honesty might relieve the weight, but it could also shatter what remained. And yet, hiding it felt like a slow poison, each secret thought another thread tying me to a choice I might regret. In the evening, I caught myself glancing at the door, half expecting him to return. I didn't know if I hoped he would or feared it. The emotional pull lingered, stronger than the act itself, reminding me that infidelity is not just a night's mistake, it is a mark left on the heart. By the time darkness fell again, nothing had changed externally, yet everything had shifted internally. I sat alone, the quiet around me now a mix of reflection and regret. I realized that one night could not be undone. One night could not erase the choices that led here. And one night had already revealed a truth I could no longer ignore. I wondered what would happen next. Could I ever feel whole again? Could I return to my life without carrying this secret like a weight? The questions remained unanswered, and in that unresolved tension, I understood the most dangerous part: infidelity leaves no neat endings. Only choices. Only consequences. Only a lingering question that may never find an answer. Was one night enough to destroy everything, or just enough to reveal the truth? The house remained silent. And so did I. The house felt unusually quiet that evening, too quiet, like it was holding its breath. I pushed open the front door and stepped inside, shaking the last bit of cold air from my jacket. The sky outside had been a deep, bruised purple, the kind that made the streetlights glow earlier than usual. Winter was definitely creeping in. Even the wooden floor under my shoes felt colder than it should have. It was supposed to be an ordinary night, routine, safe, but something felt off, like a puzzle piece had shifted while I was gone, so subtle no one else would notice, but impossible for me to ignore. I stood in the living room for a moment, letting my eyes adjust. Everything looked normal: the soft hum of the heater, the faint smell of laundry detergent from the morning wash, the couch cushions slightly uneven the way he always left them, and yet, my chest tightened with a strange unease. Why does it feel like something is about to happen? I shook the thought away and tried to laugh at myself. Maybe I was just tired. Maybe my mind was looking for drama where there was none. Still, as I walked deeper into the house, I couldn't ignore the tension coiling quietly in the back of my mind. His door was cracked open. A thin line of warm light spilled into the hallway, flickering softly like it was breathing. I paused. He rarely left his door open like that unless he wanted to talk, or unless he wasn't there at all. Hello. I called out gently. No answer. I told myself not to overthink it, but the silence felt heavier than before. A part of me wanted to push the door open. Another part whispered that I shouldn't. That crossing that line, even a small one, could change things in ways I wasn't prepared for. Instead, I moved toward the kitchen. The window above the sink was fogged from the heater, blurring the view of the street outside. I wiped a small circle with my sleeve and stared at the empty road. Not a single car. Not a single person. It's too quiet. Why did that bother me so much? Moments later, I heard the front door close softly. I turned around sharply, heart jumping. He walked in, hair slightly damp, cheeks flushed from the cold, eyes darker than usual. His expression froze when he saw me. "Oh, you're home," he said, voice quieter than normal. Something in the way he looked at me made my stomach twist. There was tension in his shoulders, like he'd been carrying a secret all day and didn't know how to put it down. "Yeah. Just got in," I replied, trying to sound casual. He nodded once and walked past me, but the air between us felt charged, like electricity just before a storm breaks. I watched the way his jaw tightened, the way his hand stayed curled at his sides, the way he didn't quite meet my eyes. What happened to him today? And why did I suddenly feel like it had something to do with me? He paused at his door. Didn't go inside, just stood there. Then he looked back over his shoulder, just for a second, and that single glance carried something I couldn't name, something unspoken, something dangerous, something that would change everything sooner or later. I swallowed hard, and somewhere deep inside me, a question formed. Was tonight really going to be just another normal night? Because suddenly, it didn't feel like it at all. If you want, I can continue with the rising action, 1,200 to 1,500 words, next. The door opened with a soft sound, barely louder than my breathing. He stood there holding a small, almost unnecessary excuse, something about a light flickering, a question about the building, a concern dressed up as politeness. The hallway light cast his shadow longer than it should have been, stretching into my living room like it already belonged there. I should have ended it at the doorway. I knew that. The thought arrived fully formed, clear and responsible. But responsibility felt heavy that night, and I was already tired of carrying weight. "Come in," I heard myself say. The door closed behind him, and with it went something invisible but important. The house no longer felt hollow. It felt occupied, aware. Every sound sharpened. Every movement seemed to leave a trace. We stood a few feet apart, speaking carefully at first. Neutral words. Safe topics. The weather. The building. The late hour. Our voices sounded different indoors, softer, closer. Between sentences, silence gathered, not awkward, not empty. It lingered, waiting to be acknowledged. I noticed things I hadn't before. The way he listened without interrupting. The way his eyes didn't rush away when I spoke. It wasn't flotation. Not yet. It was attention, and that made it more dangerous. Inside my head, a quiet argument began. "This is harmless. This is how it starts. You're just talking. You're already crossing a line." I laughed at something he said, surprised by how easily it came. The sound felt unfamiliar, like a version of me I hadn't heard in a long time. He smiled in response, not wide, not obvious, just enough to acknowledge the moment. Time slowed, stretching thin. Minutes passed without either of us checking the clock. We drifted into personal territory without deciding to. Loneliness slipped into the conversation like it had been invited. He spoke about distance. I spoke about absence. We didn't name the people involved, but their shadows hovered between us, unspoken and understood. At one point, the lights flickered briefly. The room dimmed, then returned. Neither of us moved. That small interruption felt symbolic, like a warning gently offered and quietly ignored. I became acutely aware of space, how little of it remained between us. Our hands rested at our sides, close enough to feel warmth, not close enough to touch. That distance vibrated with possibility. I thought about my partner then. About promises made casually, assuming they would never be tested like this. Guilt rose again, insistent and sharp. I almost stepped back, almost. Instead, I stayed still. And in that stillness, I made a choice, not loud, not dramatic, but deliberate all the same. I chose not to stop what was unfolding. I chose the moment over the consequences. When the conversation finally slowed, neither of us suggested he leave. The air felt heavier now, charged with everything we weren't saying. I reached for the lamp and turned it off, leaving the room in softer shadows. The silence deepened. Behind it, something irreversible took shape, quietly, undeniably, and somewhere within me, I knew there was no turning back from the line we had just crossed. The days that followed taught me how loud silence could be. A life continued with convincing precision. Morning routines. Messages exchanged. Shared spaces occupied without collision. To anyone watching, nothing was wrong. That was the cruel efficiency of it, how easily betrayal could hide behind normalcy. When I was with my partner, I listened more carefully than before. I laughed at the right moments. I asked questions I should have been asking all along. Guilt had made me attentive, and that realization cut deeper than anger ever could. I wondered why it had taken a mistake to make me present.At night. I lay awake beside them, staring into the dark, my thoughts crowded with things I could never say. Confession hovered constantly at the edge of my mind, heavy and tempting. But I feared it wouldn't cleanse anything, it would only transfer the weight from my chest to theirs. So I stayed silent, convincing myself that carrying it alone was the lesser harm. I saw my neighbor again. Days later. It happened in passing, as before. No conversation. No acknowledgement beyond a brief, careful glance. There was restraint in that distance, almost respect. Or perhaps it was self-preservation. Whatever connection had sparked between us now existed only as memory, contained, controlled, deliberately ignored. Still, his presence lingered. Not as desire, but as a reminder of what I was capable of when left alone with unmet needs and opportunity. He wasn't the cause. He was the mirror point. One evening, I sat on the same couch where everything had begun. The house was quiet again, but the quiet no longer felt inviting. I understood then that the night hadn't changed my circumstances, it had changed my awareness. I could no longer pretend that loneliness hadn't existed before, or that it would disappear simply because I wanted it to. Infidelity, I learned, isn't always about wanting someone else. Sometimes it's about wanting to be someone else, someone less invisible, less careful, less resigned. My partner spoke about the future casually one night. Plans. Assumptions. Certainty. I nodded along, my chest tight, knowing how fragile certainty truly was. I wondered whether love could survive truths left unspoken, or whether silence slowly eroded it anyway. In the end, there was no confrontation. No confession. No redemption, just continuation. The neighbor remained a neighbor. My partner remained unaware. And I remained changed, carrying a quiet fracture beneath an unbroken surface. Some nights, when the house is still and the lights are low, I think back to that moment at the door. To the second before choice solidified into action. I wonder who I would be now if I had decided differently. That question has no answer, only the echo of a night that never truly ended, and a secret that will follow me into every room I enter, whether I am alone or not.